Questions?
Yeah. Yeah. So I wanted to ask, what's the difference between a laziness and greed? Like, I was thinking about it, and one thing that few of the things that I arrived at
You were
is like
contemplating it.
laziness. Yeah, I was. Yeah, basically, I'm
Thinking
contemplating
about
on
it is
this.
contemplating, right? In the language of this work.
Yeah,
Okay?
and I actually enjoyed it.
Good, yeah. It's
I
good to
actually,
exercise your brain.
yeah.
Go ahead.
So, like, one thing that I noticed with respect to laziness is that, like, its repercussions affects just the target, the guy or girl who is like being lazy, and their loved ones to some extent. Whereas the repercussions of greed are like it can affect people around them
The
and
what?
something of those.
I missed the word. The what of greed?
The repercussions of the greed
Repercussions. Okay.
affects people around them and
Okay.
even non-loved ones.
And
But
laziness. What about
one core thing that
laziness?
I noticed is, yeah, so like for laziness, I feel like it is like following one's natural tendencies of the ego, and like it's usually effortless, I would say.
Why would you say it's
Whereas greed,
natural? Why do you say it's a natural tendency? I mean, it's a natural
it's
tendency, I
natural
suppose,
tendency.
for some animals. But if you get hungry, right? If your food isn't brought to you, you know, or your mom doesn't bring it to you, or it's not available at the store, and you start getting hungry, you stop being as lazy, right? When you're hungry or thirsty. So it depends on your circumstances. But keep going.
Yeah, yeah, but like one prefers it to be as like prefers the natural tendencies as much as possible until it reaches such a point that you can't follow with that situation. But like one thing that I noticed was like for laziness, it is like following the ego
Okay, let me just
for
clarify
what it
something.
wants at the
Is
moment.
playing a video game considered laziness?
Uh, Depends, but most probably yes.
Okay, and so is playing video games a natural tendency?
With the way things are designed these days, I would argue yes, because they.
Okay, so but last time we talked about conditioning, and we talked about classical conditioning, we talked about operant conditioning, and we talked about B.F. Skinner. Did you look those guys up?
No,
Oh, okay.
I don't do.
That's interesting
But
because that's directly related to all this. But go ahead.
okay, okay,
Yeah, I don't suggest that people uh, study something just because I have nothing better to do or because I'm trying to fill in the time. It's because it's important.
okay.
And so, uh, why didn't you look them up on window? I'm just curious. Why wouldn't you do that?
I I was reading few other things, and I frankly didn't look into it. Yeah,
Okay, all right. So
maybe it's just
we're trying to differentiate laziness and greed, right? And what I'm objecting to is you saying it's a natural tendency when you know from our talk last time that it's something that's been reinforced in you by variable schedule of reinforcement, you know, fun battles, sexy girls, in the game or whatever, some social interaction, and a lot of reinforcement, right? It's like you get to go into battle, but you don't have to. What kind of games are you playing, by the way?
yeah. Those are the kind of games I play usually. The first
Single
person,
single player shooter or
the
massive online?
single player shooters.
Okay, all right. So what I want to be clear is that that's not the natural order, unless you were hunting for food, right? And the way things are going, maybe you will be. No, not in India. You guys are in pretty good shape. All right. So okay. So then let's talk about. Uh, okay. So let's scratch the thing about it's the natural way to go. All right.
Okay.
And of course, there's some truth to that, the laziness. But most people, if they're lazy, after a while they get bored. And when they get bored, they want to do something. That's more like the natural order of things. They don't plug themselves into a machine that has been designed to capture them and hold them as long as possible. And a machine that, or a game that's been refined over, I don't know, half a century of this is how we can make money off these kids. We'll give them a game and we'll make it almost impossible for them to leave. I know I've played some of them. I played Call of Duty like there was 2 weeks gone, right? Okay, so let's just make sure that you don't think it's natural. It's you've been trained to do this the way I would train a horse or a donkey. Okay, you've been conditioned, and if you looked into it, you'd see that this is nothing. This is exactly what people. I mean, maybe if they don't overtly, say, "Hey, I'm going to create this paradigm that'll be." We're going to use some classical conditioning with a variable schedule of reinforcement. They may or may not think that consciously, but the machines know and the AI knows that's what's going to work. And so what you're up against now is nothing compared to what's coming in terms of addicting, using that word very, very loosely, paradigms to capture your mind, your eyes, your ears, your heart, and your spirit. All right, and all they want from you is your time and your money. And at the end of it, maybe you're good at playing a video game, but that's all. And then if they stop making that game, I don't know. So let's just get clear that that's not what we call laziness. That's what we call being weak, and also being ignorant. There's three kinds of ignorance. There's one, not knowing something and knowing you don't know it. Two, not knowing something and thinking you do know it. And three, these are from the Dalai Lama, by the way, not knowing something and going around telling other people, spreading your ignorance, right? So, all right, well, let's keep going though. This is good. So we can't use that as an example of laziness.
But how about this? Like, what if it's like following one's ego for what it wants at the moment?
That's called greed. That's called greed. I mean, in the terminology, that's called wanting gratification. That's called eating your cake before dinner. That's called wanting your gratification and wanting it now. That's what little kids do. With a little kid, if they want their candy, if they see a piece of candy, that's all they want, and they want it right now. You can't say, hey, I'd like to, although there are some experiments where they take young kids, I'm not sure exactly what age, and they put maybe a cupcake in the middle of the table, and they leave the kid alone in the room with it, and they measure the amount of time it takes for the kid to grab the cupcake. Are you familiar with those studies?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's lack of patience, lack of discipline, and greed for gratification. And it's the reason they do it with little kids is because only little kids would be that, not have that self-control. Okay?
So what's the use of greed at all? I think misinterpreted it. I thought greed is something long-term thing, because like when someone's greedy about money and all.
Right, and that's precisely why I brought it up, because I want you to learn that greed can occur in many forms. Greed for gratification, greed for instant gratification, greed for approval, greed for sex, greed for, it's like acting like a little kid or a very sick adult, right?
But like, isn't that a response to scarcity mindset? Like, what's the reason for
scarcity mindset? Tell me what scarcity mindset is.
Like, whatever resource that one is aiming for, if one believes that's pretty scarce and others might like take it up, and that resource is pretty useful, for example, just money, for example, and it's limited to 100 gold.
Yeah, that's a fancy word for greed. Scarcity would be something like insight. Scarcity would be people that are woken up. Scarcity would be people who are joyful in life. That's scarce, joy. Not temporary happiness, but joy. So this scarcity mindset, that's another example of how the culture just like gives you some excuse. Oh, you've got scarcity mindset. Oh, and you've got ADHD. And oh, you've got this, that, and or you're addicted. All these words. Get rid of all of them. And let's just talk. I mean, the fact of the matter is that, I mean, greed for food, right? So this is a real problem, because if someone is too greedy, they can't do this work. They're not mature enough. It's like trying to teach a little kid that won't even pay attention to the keyboard, trying to teach him to play piano.
Then what is greed, and like why?
Greed and aggression are the two things that are destroying this world. And so what makes sense, I believe, is for you to broaden your idea of what greed is, because you've coned it down to something very narrow, right? And even that, that's a conditioned response to a machine that's designed to do that, right? So I wouldn't call that greed. I'd call that being captured, having your soul sucked out. I'd call it devil magic, right? So let's move on, unless you want to say more about laziness and greed. But laziness, both of those will keep you from making any progress in this work at all. Yeah, because you're just not mature enough, and that's not somebody who can benefit from this work. You have to, be an adult, and you have to be able to have some discipline, right? Remember the paramita of discipline? And you have to have some patience, right? And you have to have some insight. Like, insight would have come if you'd done the reading, right? You'd understand more about behaviorism and how we can do this very easily. I mean, there's ways to get you to like do capture things all day long. If they wanted to do that and they thought they could make money doing it, they would. You know what I mean? Capture, C-A-P-T.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's just being captured. All right. And it reinforces at many, many different levels. All right. Okay. So, questions about laziness or greed?
So regarding,
Did you look up the words? Did you look up the words?
I did not look up the words. I just wanted to.
I wonder where the word laziness comes from. Where does that word come from? Lazy.
Unwilling to work. It's derived.
Speak louder, please. Please.
I think it's derived from some German word.
Mm-hmm. German word for what?
Idle.
Lidle?
Idle. Idle. Idle.
Idle.
I-D-L-E.
Idle. Okay. All right. So good. Sometimes when you're trying to understand what a statement means, it's very useful to find out where the word comes from. Because, and this will be true for you as you get older, you'll see that the words are changed and they're substituted with something like, what did you say? A scarcity mindset. That's just a marketing tool for somebody. So if somebody needed to write a marketing PhD or master's or whatever, and they said, hey, scarcity mindset or whatever, or maybe there's a whole other pseudoscience around it, but scarcity mindset, that I don't know what that is. But it doesn't sound very useful because it doesn't tell you how to get rid of it. But I can tell you this, it's nothing new. How many people starved to death in the last century?
I don't know.
Find out.
Billions.
Find out. Just check. How many people starved to death in the 20th century, which is just passed?
$70 million in 20th 20th century.
70 million people starved to death. They couldn't get food, and they starved to death. Their children starved to death. Slowly. Now that's scarcity. All right? And so what happens is, because of the peculiarities of the first 20 years of this century, people have had to like develop all kinds of weird ways of talking about things. If there's a nuclear war, it's estimated that 5 billion people will starve to death, if not more. Okay, so now that might give you a scarcity mindset. But them being out of Snickers at the supermarket is not a scarcity mindset. Okay? So we got to grow up, we got to look around, we got to see the world and realize that, hey, we've been living in a little cocoon where it's like the Matrix, where they take you and they plug you in, and you do your coding, and then they unplug you and send you back so you can eat and sleep. Then you come back and they plug you back in, right? So that's a different thing. All right? Anything more on laziness and greed?
One thing about greed, why is it there in people at all?
Greed?
Why do people have,
It's not in people. I mean, monkeys have it. Some dogs have it. They learn it, and they reinforce it in each other. Sometimes they have greed for power, right? And so then it becomes something else. We call it something else. Or they have greed for instant gratification, right? So it's a powerful word. It's one worth exploring because, like I said, greed and aggression are the cause of this world's problems, right? And because of greed, and actually they use a lot of the aggression in the games too, right? It's very easy to capture people. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So so good. This is perfect. Now your ideas of greed get bigger, right? And your ideas of laziness should get smaller, because what we're talking about is not laziness per se. We're talking about ignorance. And what's the remedy for ignorance?
The study of things.
Insight.
Put in effort.
Insight. Okay? It doesn't take effort to learn. I don't know what they did to your brain that makes you feel like learning is painful, but it's a common syndrome, right? But in fact, you like to learn. I know that. So you got to quit lying to yourself. All right. Anything more on laziness or greed?
No.
Okay. All right. Question.
Yes. So, what's the difference between cowardice and self-doubt? I have been contemplating on that, and
Between what and self? Between what and what?
Cowardice.
Cowardice. Yeah. The difference between cowardice and self-doubt. Okay. Good.
Self-doubt.
Good.
So I feel like cowardice is running away from certain situation, whereas self-doubt is inward focus to whoever is self-doubting on themselves. And like I feel like cowardice is like kind of a self-preservation force.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But self-doubt, if done pretty early, is a pretty good self-growth force. Like, it's being honest with oneself and putting in an effort to accept that whatever they think is not real, and like they need to improve on it.
Okay. Give me an example of when you were contemplating cowardice. What examples were you thinking of?
I would say two lines of soldiers clashing in, suppose, early in Bronze Age or Iron Age, whenever.
Okay.
And
When
like
you're none of this has to do with other people. All of this has to do with you, right? And so there's no reason to go back into the Bronze Age. I mean, because cowardice is the daily lot of many people. So it has more to do with. I mean, I was thinking you're going to think, well, I would be scared to go into a group of girls at the bar. I'd be a coward. So can we bring it out from the Bronze Age and maybe put it at least in the 21st century somewhere? It doesn't have to be about you specifically. But soldiers, that's a different situation. You're not being drafted anytime soon. So let's talk some more. Cowardice. What comes to mind?
So for cowardice, I would say like maybe not applying to some place that is bit challenging or one is afraid of it, or
Very
like you
good,
said,
very good,
like
very
in a
good, very
bar.
good. Excellent. Bingo. Right. All right. Good. So now we have an example of that. Now let's get an example of self-doubt.
Self-doubt is like the example that I like discussed earlier, right? About not applying to places. It could be because of self-doubt that I'm not worthy enough, or I don't know whether I can do the job if I join them.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. So what's the difference between cowardice and self-doubt in that situation?
I feel like self-doubt is just an indicator, and it's a way of saying to myself that I need to improve on it. But cowardice
So I
is
say,
outright
are you
saying that
flattering yourself a bit, perhaps?
could be.
Okay,
I don't know.
because from what I hear, the self-doubt and the self-doubt is a rationalization for the cowardice. Or the laziness. It could be the laziness
Yeah,
too. Could be the laziness too, now that I think about it.
yeah,
But
yeah.
you got a job, and
It could
congratulations.
be
That's
both.
fantastic. I'm so happy to hear that. That's good. But uh, let's keep going. So self-doubt, you're saying that's constructive. What's constructive about self-doubt?
Because it points out what is missing in me, and like it basically points out what
Okay,
should
so
be worked upon
what's missing?
to reach that.
What's missing?
Missing would be to put in the effort. I would say the skills required to like be good at the job,
Good.
and to realize the fact that those skills are achievable
Right.
only through
Excellent.
effort, and laziness can't
Right. So
help
both laziness
achieve
and
that thing.
cowardice will get in your way.
Yeah,
Okay. So this is good. So self-doubt though, self-doubt is different than self-appraisal, right?
self-appraisal is like, I feel like it's like positive version of self-doubt, but
Exactly. So
it may not.
why do you use precisely? So why would you use the negative phrase of self-doubt, which is another word for cowardice and laziness?
Maybe
Why wouldn't you
because
say
it
appraisal? I
depends.
did a self-appraisal. I put my 2 feet on the ground. I looked at myself honestly. I appraised myself, and I need to learn Python. But I don't want to learn Python because I don't want to read that thick book, or I hear that it's hard or whatever. I don't know anything about coding, but you know what I'm saying? So we take these
Yeah,
words and
yeah.
we bewitch ourselves, right? It's like black magic. It's devil talk. And so
But I think,
self-doubt, I mean, it would be great actually if you did doubt the existence of the self, but that's later. So I think you should throw that out, self-doubt. And yet,
but
because
is
it
this
doesn't
like
help you.
not?
It's not a word. It's not a phrase that helps you. It's negative talk to yourself. It's like doing voodoo on yourself.
But like, wouldn't just being positive about oneself lead to delusions? Like, isn't that delusional if you think that if you keep using self-appraisal,
It's delusional if you are
you're not
already are a
realistic?
master at Python, right? It would be delusional if you were already the best coder on the planet for Python, and you said, "Oh, I doubt, I'm," but that's rarely the case, right?
But like, would self-doubt lead to humility? Like, I feel like difference between
No,
these
no,
two
no,
is
no.
more about how one is motivated and
No, no. Humility that's forced because you're afraid, or because you're weak, or because you're lazy, that's not humility. That's your mind trying to turn something negative into a virtue. Because humility is a very important virtue, right? But see,
yeah,
you just bypass all of these by using words like self-doubt and scarcity mindset and all this, garbage mind stuff that's not even your thought. It's from the internet, right? Or from your friends, and it's not even your own thought. So it's important the words we use, especially when we're talking about ourselves, right? So you're not lazy,
sometimes
it's
I feel
greedy. You don't have self-doubt, you have cowardice. And you don't, self-doubt is another word, the way we're using it here, for self-appraisal and finding that you fall short and that you need to do something. And all of these are the devil talk. And you're devil talking yourself into misery. But let's keep going. What else do we got going here?
yeah. So I was thinking, how does one improve on cowardice? Is it like, but like, if one improves on cowardice, wouldn't it change to courage? Because like courage
Yes,
is
yes, yes,
not
yes, yes,
running away
yes,
from.
yes. And this and life takes courage. Absolutely perfect, beautiful, gorgeous. That's exactly what we want. So you could take these. The opposite of laziness is effort and energy, right? Paramitas. The opposite of cowardice is courage. It's not a paramita, but I could tell you it's needed in this work. And so you got to cultivate it, and you can cultivate it. And the other way to talk about self-doubt is self-appraisal. And if you persist in using this language against yourself, your ego is your mind is, which is your worst enemy, will convince you that you should spend your life in quiet desperation. You should just be one more miserable person.
So,
Okay, what else we got on the agenda? Another question?
yeah. So, and regarding something about like whatever terms I keep using, I sometimes believe I keep using those things because of my laziness to explore those words, those things deeply. Like I feel like
Yeah, very good
laziness is
insight.
pretty
That's a
big.
very good insight. That's a very good insight. Yes, you do. And what was that word? Yeah, I've got a scarcity mindset. I've got this and that, and I'm late. I mean, how does it feel when you call yourself lazy?
It feels bad, but it also
So why do you
reminds
do
me
it?
that
Why do you do it if it feels bad?
because most often than not, I actually don't think that I'm lazy. It's like just you said, it's like automatic reaction
It's a neurosis.
engineered by.
It's a neurosis,
Yeah,
a form of mental illness that's very, very common. So you just got to get rid of that stuff.
and I have been reading that other book. I think Road Less Traveled, and he also talks a lot about
I haven't read
being
that, so tell me more
laziness.
about this. Tell me about this book, Road Less Traveled.
Yeah, so Road Less Traveled is mostly about, I think, few of the things why people actually have like a lot of mental problems, and he discusses a lot of things that actually relates quite well with what we discuss here as well.
Oh, that's
Like
interesting.
he also
Now, he wrote a book called
and
People of the
he
Lie. He wrote a book called People of the Lie. That book is, at least it was worth reading back then. I don't know, it's been a long, long time, but I did read one of his books called People of the Lie. And you may want to follow up with that if it's helpful, right? And what's his name, the author?
think Scott Peck.
Okay,
Dr.
Scott
Peck,
Peck,
I would
right?
say.
Isn't he a psychiatrist?
Yeah.
Good, good. So you're
I
finding
think
it
so.
helpful.
Yes.
All right. Do
Yeah.
you find it
A lot.
inspirational?
I think yes,
Good,
because he
good.
discusses a lot about, like, the core thing that I arrived at is that everything good requires effort, and he discusses a lot about love, and love requires a lot of effort, and
Okay, it
like
depends
it's
on
not
which
an
level
effort,
we're
it's
speaking
like
of. Love with another person, love with a small L, yes, it takes a huge amount of effort, right? And the love you give is the love you receive, and so on and so forth. But love with a capital L, the love of God for us, for example, the love of nature for us and the creatures, for the trees and for everything out here, that doesn't cost. And it's so much more valuable than what we've managed to create ourselves as humans. So again, with these words, we've got to be real careful. So, but you're absolutely right. It does require quite a bit of work to be worthy of love from another human. And so I don't know if that's part of your plan is to also stay single all your life or not. But if it isn't, is it or not? I mean, you don't have to say if you don't want to, but unless it's your plan to stay single all your life, then you're going to have to grow up, because who would want to partner with a man who considered himself lazy, greedy, a coward full of self-doubt? I mean, I don't know many women that are going to buy that package, right?
yeah,
Nor should they.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
let's keep going.
yes. So I had another thing that I wanted to discuss about, like, what do you mean by fear of success? Like, I was thinking a bit about it, and it feels like a bit paradoxical in nature. Like, if success is like a subjective thing, and how come can one be fearful of it? And if one is fearful of it, will they ever be successful at all? Like, eventually, if they had some like if they had some definition of a success, all those definition will erode away, because now their only aim in life is to not succeed because they fear success.
How about their aim in life is to avoid success because they're afraid, actually, of being a full-grown adult. They're afraid of having power over other people. They're afraid of being in a responsible position. They feel like they're imposters. They feel that it's a deep neurosis, and a bad one. And I'm glad you brought it up, because that's a huge one. Fear of success. The phrase actually comes from a woman at Harvard. What was her name? She was the president of Radcliffe College. And what she noticed is that women or girls of the same intelligence from a women's college did much better than the same women at Harvard undergrad, Radcliffe. And she wondered why this was so. And she came up with some theories about, fear of success and other things like that, because for women, it makes them, I'm just quoting, but I'm not even doing a good job of that, because I'm trying to remember her name. I tell you what, look up fear of success real quick. Her name may pop up. It starts with an M, I think. Or just do fear of success Radcliffe or Harvard. Looks like we lost a connection.